Good evening. If you want to go ahead and turn to 2 Kings chapter 2, we will be there before we leave tonight. Tonight we will look at the survey of a book, except that it's 3 different books, except that it's also 6 different books. The 1st and 2nd of the Old Testament. 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles. Do you know why they're 1st and 2nd? Because they were too long to go in one roll, on one scroll. No kidding. They're just too big to go on. And they've been broken apart in certain Bibles, in Hebrew Bibles, if I'm not mistaken. They're still one piece, so that you would say Samuel or Kings or Chronicles. So before we get further, if we wind up hearing me say Samuel, Kings, or Chronicles, that's why I've been trying to keep some of that together. We are going to go to like 2 Kings, though. That's definitely still there. We should not change our Bibles, not one bit. It's not a problem this way or that way. All of the information's still there. Every scripture is still there. Nothing's missing. As far as extra reading, what you could read to help you with this, there are commentaries that are available. If you'll buy me an extra copy, I'll be happy to read it along for you. But what you most likely need in a study that's inside one of these books of the Bible is a modern language translation that does not have study influence in it from Schofield or some of the other Calvinistic doctrinal teachers. And a chronological Bible will help. Especially the chronological part, even if you are adventurous enough to take on words that aren't used in modern day language. I have one here. If you'd like to look at it, I'll be happy to share it with you or let you hold it, take it home with you. I do take a finger for each day the library book is not returned. But they will give you such things on the same page as what is in a different translation, or not translation, a different one of the books. Why is that important? Because you'll read of certain kings in 1 Kings and have to go to 2 Chronicles to see other things that are listed. The focus of the books themselves are slightly different, in that Kings is not worried as much about the spiritual things. They're talking about what the king did for the empire. But Chronicles is going to tell you how his soul did in front of God. Jeremy, I got a map for you that actually makes sense this time. The largest expansion of the borders of the nation of Israel, physical nation of Israel, are found under King Solomon. In King Solomon's reign, you find the not only the furthest border expansion, but also the furthest influence, and that he has potentates that will come to him and say, he did a really great job. There's one that's in the Bible that is mentioned specifically. It is the Queen of Sheba comes up from the south, and when she gets there, she says Solomon is amazing, but in a lot more words and a lot more flowery of language. We don't know exactly who it is that wrote these compendiums. Jeremiah is thought to have at least be the prophet who wrote Kings. Ezra and Ezekiel are also thrown into the mix, and then there's some of it that they don't know who the prophet is that wrote it. It just keeps getting shared and copied, and with so many copies existing, it is considered canonical. But the point of them being listed and given to us is that we get to see what the kingdom did. If God's kingdom were a kingdom, of earth by men. And I don't think I have to, build up the surprise too much. It's a terrible job. We do a terrible job of regulating ourselves when we're not looking to God as our complete leader. They are the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th books of the modern American Bible. The chapters, they got a bunch of chapters. Well, Ezekiel's got a bunch of chapters. The verses, Ezekiel's got a bunch of verses too. But they've got more words on here than my mom was allowed to say in one day. I've heard my daddy say that, so I can share it with you. And if she listens to this, she'll say, George, I like to bring you at this point, like, what are some of the main words of this book? It will tell you what this book is about, except that the first words that are listed for these books, down to like 10 and 11, is king, someone's name. It doesn't get very far. It doesn't help us very much, as we have seen in some of the New Testament epistles, where the repeated words tell us more about the book. Some of the honorable mentions that do continue to pop up from king to king and age to age are temple, ark, worship, seek, pray, and humble. Guys, if you're looking for an easy put it together sermon, that's a nice kit. If you'll just pick out of those 6 words, you can put together a sermon fairly easily. I say that fairly easily. Those are some words that are not only appropriate to the time that they're written in this book, but beyond and transcendently as well. One of the things that needs to be written down, or one of the reasons things need to be written down, are so that we do not cause ourselves to walk into the failures that we should have learned from. Making it also more difficult to read this book is that those minor prophets that we studied a couple of years ago in our Sunday class, and the ones that come after the wisdom literature of Psalms, Proverbs, and those 5 books there, those prophets go inside of these 6 books somewhere. That's where they go. The prophets weren't just talking to anybody in the world who would listen, but that you will find there was King so-and-so, and this prophet came and spoke with that king. Mark had to go through and build a chart kind of thing for school as he was going through Old Testament history. So he comes home on vacation, and I'm really interested in what is said there, because to be completely honest with you, this is not my bag. I like the symbolism and things that are in other places, and the whole and so-and-so replaced his father as king and did evil in the sight of the Lord and caused people to sin. That's not as much fun for me. So I studied this less, and I wanted to get his information. So I did, and we built a chart. And if you want a copy of that chart, I'll be happy to give it to you. I didn't know that Israel had a queen who ruled the country. I didn't know that there were 7 kings in the United Kingdom. You thought there were 3. I thought there were 3. Kings, the book of Kings itself covers roughly 400 years of history, from the end of David's reign in 930 BC to the middle of the Babylonian exile, 561 BC. Now, if you're not sure what the C means in front of it, there's a C period. It stands for the word circa, which means about. Or if you'll say it like I like to say it, ish. So it's 970-ish to 561-ish BC. There are 7 kings of the United Kingdom. 3 were considered good. So we know the 3 that we would not necessarily consider good, but the 3 kings of the United Kingdom are always thought to be Saul, David, and Solomon. What's not listed in those is that when we go to the book of Judges and we look at the story of Gideon, he sets himself up as king. He even has a son that he names, "My father is the king." And then there is another one, and his name just flew out of my head. It's Abinoam or something to that effect. So there's 5. Rehoboam is the king who breaks the country, but technically he was the king over the united country. That's 6. And there's one more, Absalom. Absalom usurped the crown from David. David left Jerusalem almost naked, barefoot, running through from Jerusalem out towards what we've been studying as the Garden of Gethsemane, telling everyone to submit to his son, to Absalom. So there's 7 kings. Didn't know that. Absalom reigned for like 10 minutes. What is in here? What does everyone need to know? And I really think that this is a transcendent teaching from a lot of books that may need some tweaking, but here it works. God's relationship with Israel is similar to that of Christ and the church, something we read in Ephesians chapter 5 at the end of that chapter. The relationship between God and Israel is a husband-wife type of relationship. The book of Hosea especially shows us that. In these hundreds of years where God allowed man to try to figure out how to rule themselves on their own, the thing that continued to be ever present and growing were the sins of the individual, their ability to lead the country off of the cliff to where they needed to either be rescued by God or they were just allowed to falter. Man cannot be righteous enough to be in a relationship of obedience. We just can't. And a book like Samuel King's Chronicles is a place where you could almost let your Bible fall open and point to the page and say, look, here's another guy that had a chance and blew it. There were 7 kings over the United Kingdom. In the north, there were 20 after it splintered. None of the kings were good. They were carried off into captivity for Assyria. There were 20 kings in the southern kingdom. They got to govern themselves for another 100-something years. And yet they still wind up getting carried off into Babylonian exile in 561. What everyone needs to know when you read a book like this is that without grace, we are not going to make it. We can't rule ourselves. We can't be right. We can't even clean our own consciences and still be righteous. Grace is required, and that grace is what is given to us so that we should be saved. And while baptism is a component for us to enter into salvation, the thing that saves you every single day is your faith in God and your willingness to wake up and act like His child. Encouraging verses. 2 Kings chapter 6 and verse 16 and 17. I've read this one for us recently, but I love it. Here it is. He said, do not be afraid. That is, Elisha said to his servant, who is looking at the entire city surrounded by the enemy. Elisha says, do not be afraid, for those that are with us are more than those who are with them. Then Elisha prayed and said, O Lord, please open his eyes that he may see. So the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of the horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. What if they're there? Where did they go? We're not reading of miraculous things that are being done because of demonic possession, and then we see a demon extricated from a body. We're just seeing behind the curtain. That's what Elisha's asking for his servant. Just let him see behind the curtain. Let him see where you're at. Let him see what you were doing. Patrick, it means they got wall hacks. And if we only knew what God was doing, if we only had that kind of encouragement time after time, Would it matter? Would it help? I'm afraid to say that it would probably just be another condemnation for us. That here's another reminder of why you need to be the person that you need to be. And you just blow right through that stop sign. I'm talking to you. You is me. I'm talking to me. Empowering verses. This is a little bit of a long read, and I'll tell you why this is empowering for me particularly. Elijah is hiding after killing all of those prophets at Mount Carmel. In 1 Kings chapter 19, starting in verse 9, there Elijah came to a cave and lodged in it, and behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, "What are you doing, Elijah?" He said, "I've been very zealous for the Lord, God of hosts, for your people of Israel. I have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword, and I, even I only, am left. And they seek my life to take it away." And he said, "Go out and stand on the mount before the Lord." And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great strong wind tore the mountains and broke to pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face with his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of a cave. And behold, there came a voice to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And he said, "I've been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, for the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, killed your prophets with the sword, and I, even I only, am left. And they seek my life to take it away." And the Lord said to him, "Go." And then the Lord gives him commands about who to anoint to be king, who to make into priest. Gives him a laundry list of things to do. If you read through this and you do it slightly different, let me suggest to you, Elijah is a little brat. He's acting spoiled. And God talks to him like he's a 4-year-old. "What are you doing? Why are you here?" "I'm pouting up here in this cave all by myself." "No, wait a minute, come here, let me show you something. This is who I am. What are you doing here?" "I'm still pouting right here." So why is that an empowering verse? As my wife might attest, I can pout with the best of them. And still, Elijah had work to do. No matter how overcome with emotion, fear, anger, fill in your emotion here, you might be, the Lord can still use you. And if he doesn't use you for a good example, may God forbid that you get used for an evil one. All right. I usually give you my favorite verse, but I can't do that here. I'm going to give you my least favorite verse in the entire Bible. It's not that hard for me either. It stands there very, very strong. In 2 Samuel in chapter 18, after that usurpation that Absalom tries, the army goes against him and they kill him. David has told them, "Don't hurt him." And not only do they kill him, but the guy who comes up to tell the king the news, David says, "Tell me, how is it with Absalom? What's going on with the enemy general?" And the guy apparently has no concept whatsoever of what's going on in the country and who's in charge. Says, "May it be like all of the king's enemies. We killed him real good." The king was deeply moved and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And as he wept, he said, I'm not going to do that. I need to finish the sermon and not stand here and cry. But for a father to scream out, cry out, pour out, the pain of their son being in a bad way, or even here as it is dead, the emotion that David pours into his songs, where we can see the glory of God, where we could see how a song might be sung and really bring someone's heart to where it needs to be to worship God. The songs of ascent that you would sing on the way up to Jerusalem. The emotion that he's poured into statements like these with what has happened here. And this isn't even the first child he's cried over. Least favorite verse in the entire Bible. Not even close. Before I give you your memory verse, I want to give you a whole section full of stuff. Is there anything outlandish in Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles? If you want to find the wild stuff in the Bible, most of it is in Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles. We talked about magic a little this morning in our Bible class. The witch of Endor is in 1 Samuel chapter 28, who for Saul and at Saul's behest calls Samuel up from the dead to have a conversation. In 2 Kings chapter 6, while cutting down a tree, the axe head flies into the water, and the guy who did it says, "I borrowed that. I can't pay for that." And Elisha throws a stick in the water, and the iron floats. And actually, right after that, he makes supper out of poison mushrooms and makes them, or out of poison. It's either poison gourds and good mushrooms, or poison mushrooms and good gourds. Elisha calls for she-bears. I like this one. I'm bald. I've on this one for quite a while. In 2 Kings chapter 2, starting in verse 23, we read, "He went up from there to Bethel, and while he was going up on the way, some small boys came out of the city and jeered at him, saying, 'Go up, you bald head! Go up, you bald head!' And he turned around, and when he saw them, he cursed them in the name of the Lord. And 2 she-bears came out of the woods and tore 42 of the boys." And he kept going. There's a lot more going on here than we're going to get into tonight. And while it does say small boys, that age range is much closer to Patrick than it is to Patrick's children. The statement itself of being a bald head is also not as lighthearted and whimsical as we might think. It is a much deeper cursing that is being called for. Flip ahead if you're over here in 2 Kings chapter 2. Flip on up to chapter 13. 2 Kings chapter 13, we're at verse 20. "So Elisha died, and they buried him." The guy who put verses in the Bible should have put one right here. And so Elisha died, and they buried him. The next sentence comes long enough after that fact for Elisha to not only die and not only to decay, but to be completely down to the bones. He's been buried for long enough to just be bones. Verse 20. "Now, the bands of the Moabites used to invade the land in the spring of the year. And as a man was being buried, behold, a marauding band was seen, and the man was thrown into the grave of Elisha. As soon as the man touched the bones of Elisha, he revived and stood on his feet." Elisha does a miracle. And not just a little miracle. I mean, it's the big one, right? Elisha's bones, without his consciousness whatsoever, bring a man back from the dead. That's cool. Why did that happen? If you think you're a good influence or a bad influence, what kind of influence are your bones? It's just so cool, so awesome. And the last one to set up our time concluding together is in 1 Samuel. It's a little bit longer of a read. 1 Samuel chapter 5. 1 Samuel chapter 5, starting in verse 1. It should be right there. But none of it's plugged in. When the Philistines captured the ark of God, they brought it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. Then the Philistines took the ark of God and brought it into the house of Dagon and set it up beside Dagon. They don't go into it here. Dagon is a mythological god who rules over the sea, and it's what makes them rich because they get their food and their money, mercantilism from the sea. Thank you. Verse 3, when the people of Ashdod rose early the next day, behold, Dagon had fallen face downward on the ground before the ark of the Lord. So they took Dagon and put him back up in his place. But when they rose the next morning, behold, Dagon had fallen face downward on the ground before the ark of the Lord, and the head of Dagon and both his hands were lying cut off in the threshold. Only the trunk of Dagon was left of him. This is why the priests of Dagon who enter the house of Dagon do not tread on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod to this day. They jump over the threshold because our God's symbol defeated their God's statue. I don't know about you, but I think the easiest question is why they didn't just convert. Obviously, this God's more impressive than that God. Let's go to verse 10. Between verse 5 and verse 10, they're being struck with tumors. The ark of God is causing terror around them, so they move the cities, and then they get to where they decide to send it back. Verse 10, so they sent the ark of God to Ekron, but as soon as the ark of God came to Ekron, the people of Ekron cried out, they have brought around to us the ark of the God of Israel to kill us and our people. They sent, therefore, and gathered together all the lords of the Philistines and sent away and said, send away the ark of God to Israel and let it return to its own place that it may not kill us and our people. For there was deathly panic through the whole city. The hand of God was very heavy there. The men who did not die were struck with tumors, and the cry of the city went up to heaven. I don't want to be disrespectful. I'm not trying to be. But do we understand that we're talking about a gold box with two little angels on top? And I don't think it looks anything like, I don't think what happens around the ark is anything like the Indiana Jones that's going on. I think it is so much of a magnitude worse than that. Heavier is the word the Bible uses than that. How did the children of Israel have any problem whatsoever going into the land the first time when this is the God who they had with them? The box by itself kills another god, wipes out one city, almost wipes out another city, and they finally just say, put it on a wagon and have two oxen pull it. Just get it away from us. Let it go wherever. So the Israelites is where they send it, the road they send it on. Do we appreciate that we serve a God who has this kind of power? Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles have homicide, regicide, incest, angels, poisoning. I stopped writing right there because I had to get dressed to come to church tonight. You can keep going. It's not that hard. All of the movies that you're not allowing your children to watch, that they come from ideas that are also in these sections. Why? Because man can't do it without God. And every time man tries to do it their way instead of God's way, they fail. So why would we do that in our own lives? Memory verse for us comes from the prayer of Hannah at the beginning of 1 Samuel. There is none holy like the Lord. There is none besides you. There is no rock like our God. We have more information than they did. And while we may not be able to look at that box, at the pillar of fire, the pillar of cloud, while we're not going to see the miracles that happen like they did, we can read about them, and we ought to be better suited to pay attention to them. Maybe I'll start listening better now. If there's anything you need to fix between yourself and God, this is the time chosen for it. We're invited to stand and sing.